What I'd like to do is, listen carefully. It is okay, thank you.
Yes.
We're going to finish 1.3.
Did I miss anybody else?
Skim and rush to finish 1.4. Then we're going to discuss this system that I recommend for studying. Then I'll tell you a little tiny bit about how to get your homework ready, your extra credit ready, and what to expect from the exam. Are there any questions? Where did we leave off on assignment 1.3 when we were there? So on Tuesday when we were here, I did not get to discuss entirely the Gaia hypothesis. I wish we had time to tell the story because it's kind of an amazing time in American culture. I think you all know that a central concept of ecology is that there are surprising connections between so many things. In ecology, we find interesting patterns that connect bear poo to tree growth to supporting the salmon that feed the bear. Ecology has a lot of wondrous interconnectedness, and that was really amazing. And when people started to study this in the 1960s and 70s, when the public started to hear about this in the 60s and 70s, this idea was born that really caught on. The concept that just like you have internal mechanisms that regulate and keep you healthy, that the earth has internal mechanisms that regulate and keep the earth healthy. There was even a story about the earth having a consciousness. And the name for the earth in this story was Gaia. It was called the Gaia hypothesis. The idea that the earth has internal self-regulation and a super-consciousness. We do still understand that the earth has many, many interconnections. And there are some regulatory mechanisms, but they're not conscious. The earth doesn't do anything on purpose. It doesn't have a plan. It doesn't decide to shake off the species that it doesn't want. The earth is a big, stupid rock with some water splashed on top, spinning around in the galaxy. That's the earth. The Gaia hypothesis was kind of like a cute way to think about ecology, but it was dangerously superstitious and not a very scientific idea. Anybody want to talk more about this, or do we move on?
Could you give me what a regulating thing? Could you give an example?
So the same way that you sweat to cool off your brain. Mm-hmm. The idea was that the Earth would make clouds to block sunlight if the planet got too hot.
Okay.
Technically, cloud formation does respond to temperature, but that's not because the Earth has this, plan to make itself cool. Mm-hmm. I think it just sort of made it too easy to assume that the Earth would be fine because she'll figure things out because she's pretty smart. Yeah. Yes. Bailey.
I think the same part when you said fire during the special cases of consideration.
So the part that we agree on You know, like we are conscious of our effect on the planet, and we have the capacity to influence the environment. So, where before people hoped that the Earth's consciousness and plan could work, now many of us argue that we need a group consciousness and we need to be the ones that regulate environmental quality. It's like everybody's sitting on the bus and assuming like, oh, the bus is going to figure this out. It's driving itself. Like, that was the Gaia hypothesis. Humans are a special case because actually we can drive a bus, and maybe we would want to.
So, but you have the power to like help it work.
Yeah, and we have the consciousness to see what we're doing. Yeah. Any questions about this? I kind of hate the Gaia hypothesis. It was like a really cute but really sad superstitious thing. All right. At number 24, I'm going to assume you don't have questions unless you ask me one, and I want to remind you that it goes with study goal number 13. The exponential growth question, time lag, and irreversible changes. Yes?
Yeah, what's lag time or time lag?
Oh, lag time or time lag is the simple principle that many of the things that will affect the environment today, that we're doing today, won't show their impacts until the distant future. You dig? Anybody else on number 24? Because with that, we finish assignment 1.3. Unless you have something, yes?
With long term, did they give the example of like toxic gas, like if it was like being released, that if like we have to understand that people like will have like consequences? It's not like so it's saying that we need to like stop things before they become bigger.
Well, I haven't read this chapter in like 8 years. I don't remember that part. As far as, like, the book doesn't really argue that we need to do much of anything. But the issue that we're discussing with time lag, like what we mean by time lag, which is a really challenging thing in the environment, is these are like chronic, long-term problems. A lot of environmental issues aren't immediate. Like, if I pull out Bailey's lung, it'll be pretty obvious that that was bad. But on the planet, the loss of critical species doesn't really show why it's important until maybe 100 years later when it's too late to put them back. That's what I mean by time lag. That a lot of the problems don't show themselves until much later. Now for assignment 1.4, which you just got stamped. Just so you know, I've only learned like 10% of your names. There's no grade for this, and I don't have any way to change your grade secretly. You'll always be able to see exactly what you're all graded on. But just out of curiosity, how many of you actually read all the articles in the reading packet, read some and skimmed some and sort of like flipped through, or straight up what reading packet? Feel free to be honest. I don't care. I swear I don't even know who you are, and I'm not really paying attention to who's got which finger. Okay, now. In most of my units, the reading packet has very detailed information. In this particular unit, because we're just starting to figure out how to think about environmental science, these articles are mostly just like deep thoughts. Environmental and environmental science philosophies. no single right or wrong answers. Just like, hey, trip out and think on this thing. So, I don't have anything to say about the reading packet except for a few little comments on these articles. If you have questions, though, I want to talk about them. Number 25. How many of you agree with Jared Diamond's idea that the worst mistake in the history of our race was becoming settled agricultural societies? I gotta say, I trip out on this all the time. Because, like, when I'm out hunting and gathering, I don't know if anybody else here has ever done any hunting, fishing, freediving, gathering of foods, working on a farm, but, like, the process of getting food stimulates the brain on, like, a really basic level that once you've done it, you know it just feels right. Anybody share that experience? Hunted or fished or spearfished, and, like, it makes your brain, like, go off and it feels really good. Like, I don't know, I'm super into that. Same time, I look around a lot of time at our society and I just feel like I'm trapped in that whole, like, work, watch TV, shop, work, watch TV, shop, work, watch treadmill thing with, like, all the debt, and, like, all I do is work all day so I can be away from my family. Then I, like, pay for stuff that I don't really want. I just need it so that my family can be okay while I'm at work. And then I go to the Sierras in the summer and I'm, like, with my family and I don't have to work and we don't need anything because we have each other and that's all we really need. And it's like, oh yeah, that's really good. And then I come back to work and it's like, okay kids, I'll see you in 10 months. So I always think about Jared Diamond's point here. Apparently, we were probably healthier before medicine. We died more easily, but until that point, we had it seems like, a better quality of life. I find that pretty shocking. Like, we had a much more diverse diet. Hunter-gatherer societies, as a global average, work between 12 or 20 hours per adult to feed the family for the entire week. And the rest of the time is just chilling, moving, making art, or fixing the shelter. That sounds really good. Now we all work like 50 to 60 hours, like smoke crack and drink too much, and like hump hookers. That's like modern society right there. We drive cars really fast and get in accidents and like abuse people. Awesome. So I don't know, I just think about this, but I always wonder, like, how do we go back, you know? Like, what do you do? Number 27, like, yeah, we could blow up all the dams, and that's not going to help at all. Just to be really clear, sorry, number 26, just to be really clear, I put article number 26 in there, not in support of terrorism. I got to be really clear about this. I do not support environmental or other terrorism. I understand the author's impulse to destroy modern development. So I put that in there as a meditation on, yeah, how do we do this? Like, do we just blow stuff up? Or does that fix the problem of modern society? And I'm sure we can all agree that obviously it doesn't actually fix any problems. I hope we can all agree. Let me say this again. I don't support terrorism of any sort, including environmental terrorism. 27, cool stuff about interconnectedness of life. Number 28, one of the key considerations in this course, like who's responsible to pay. And number 29, we're going to talk a lot about New Orleans in this class because that poor city is so bombed. That is the most screwed city in environmental science. And really, a lot of the problems that New Orleans faces will strike other cities a little later. It just happens to be especially old among the developed cities, the mega cities of the world. But the stuff that New Orleans faces, it's like a perfect combination there. But most of those problems plague most cities throughout the world. Anybody want me to fill in any of these general things? Yeah.
What was the social issues in New Orleans?
Well, there's like really serious poverty. And like in many other cities, that's like a key issue in the distribution of resources and protection from environmental harms. And it's like New Orleans is like a microcosm of like all of society's evils, and so the racial and economic divide is really sharp in New Orleans. But that same issue is also a global problem. Anybody else want to talk more? I hate to go so fast that you think it doesn't matter. I just don't have anything specific to say, and if you don't ask, I'm... Yes? Yes?
28, who is responsible for planning?
Well, there isn't an answer to that. That's an opinion question. You should know that we're trying to figure out, should we, the rich countries, pay to clean up developing nations like China and India? They're all building all their electricity out of coal. We're like, wait, we just figured out when we did that, we caused like global climate change, so you guys shouldn't do that. And so then, like, is it their responsibility to invest extra money in alternative energy? Is it ours, since we've already got the money by having made all these mistakes? You know what I'm saying by that? It's like if you walk into the grocery store and you steal all the stuff and you feel really bad about it, and you see a hungry man walking in to steal all the stuff, what do you tell them?
Sorry, dude, I just stole all the stuff. Kind of.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's your turn to steal the stuff because I did. At least you'll get to eat like we did. That was pretty cool. Or do we say like, no, stealing is bad, but I don't have anything for you? Or do we say, oh no, stealing is bad, here, just take all of mine? Like the environment for economic trade-off is pretty much that simple. All right, that was fun. Anything else? In the movie questions, you always have to answer questions for in-class movies. There's one I'll show you which is so entertaining that I think you'll watch even without questions, but otherwise, it's my way of making sure that you're awake. Most of you are awake. So I only intend to speak on a few of these. If you have questions, you can ask. Any questions on 30, 31, 32, or 33? So then 34, why? Why did one of these countries do so much better than the other one? Or one of these societies so much better than the other one? Yes?
Because, what is it, the Bedouin, they have a small population, and Guinea-Bissau had a large population because it doesn't work because the land can't be shared on all the people.
Yeah, and not just the land, but its resources. When everybody settles down, they just hammer the landscape. So there's nothing left to eat, and then they all starve. The Bedouin had two things going for them. You got one thing right, they're a smaller group, but number two, they're on the move. So after they hunt all the deer, they go someplace else, and when they come back in 3 years, the deer have recovered. It's a really simple lesson, but small populations moving are way, way, way less footprint than large populations stationary. And this was not the only example. We know that many of the first groups that tried to settle crashed. You've got to find some way to stash food from somewhere else if you're settled. Yes?
Would it be the same outcome if it was flipped around, like the large populations kept moving, the small stayed in one place?
I think there's a sliding scale, where a really large population would have to move further, but that could work. Like, a really, really small group could move not too far because their impact is pretty minimal, so they can come right back. A giant population has a huge footprint, so they got to go really far and wait a long time before that patch will recover. Make sense? The size of the population is inversely proportional. No, it's directly proportional. So how far they have to move and how long they have to wait. So now the Neolithic revolution in population size. Just so you know, this is one of the biggest misunderstandings in the sciences. This is a critical issue, and you've got to know it. It was today's warm-up. If it wasn't the food, then why did population grow so much in the early Neolithic?
On War History last year, we watched crash courses, and they said that they used less time, or they had more free time, and they could use that for like making families instead of hunting and gathering.
I don't know about you, it takes me about 3 minutes to make family. Point being, it doesn't take that much time to make family, just saying. I reject that concept. So what else could it be? Yes.
Was it because like mothers didn't have to like carry the kids on their backs and like make sure their young were like really like they could like if they weren't as attached to their young, so they could have kids that like more often than waiting for like having to care for the kid until they could like catch up with you.
You're kind of right, but I just want to know what simple biological process wasn't mentioned in that explanation. It's about carrying versus not carrying and how that affects birth rate. But there's like really basic biology at work. Yeah.
Like the child gets weaned like from the mother.
What do you mean to wean?
Like it's not like reliant on like the breast milk.
Breast milk, right? So here's the part that a lot of my students don't know yet. If you breastfeed regularly, you usually don't ovulate. It's not like 100% birth control, but it's like a pretty significant birth depressant. Like it lowers the likelihood that you'll have a baby if you're nursing. You know, your body's like, well, I'm focusing all the energy on making this one work. Probably not a good time to start building another one too. When you stop nursing your baby, your body's like, all right, get back to work, make another one. So now, keep in mind, in hunter-gatherer societies, mama would usually carry the baby or walk with the baby. And when the baby wants milk, it's like, okay, whatever, take some milk. We know that in hunter-gatherer societies, like at my house, kids usually breastfeed until about 2.5 to 3.5 years. So that's a 3.25 to 4.25 year spacing between births, right? Everybody's on the math there because you got to add the 9 months of gestation. So you got about 3 or 4 years between babies. In an agricultural society, grandma can watch the baby at probably 10 months, 12 months, whatever. Like a 1-year-old is pretty safe to chill out in the hut or whatever. They go, hey grandma, I'm leaving you the kid, I'm going to go out work in the field. And while mama's working in the field, her body's like, no breastfeeding, back to ovulating. So now the spacing comes in at like 20 months, 2 years. Does everybody understand what I'm saying with this? When you wean earlier, because the baby's being watched by someone else in a single place, you just pack in more babies into your reproductive life. Coincidentally, the extra food thing probably didn't affect birth rates. And by the way, agricultural societies often had worse nutritional quality. Because you cut down on variety, and you depend on a single crop that could fail, and then you're starving. Ag societies did not eat better. Common misconception. Early ag societies probably ate worse. Any questions about number 34? I'm skipping 35. I want to do 37. Sorry, skipping 35 and 36. Skipping 36. I want to do 37. There we go. Number 37. Why would the size of your economy affect your birth rates, but survivability not really affect population size? Let's do the survivability first. If people live an extra 20 years, does that grow your population?
Because you're not going to be having babies for those extra 20 years.
That's right. You've mostly shriveled up by the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Mostly. Does that make sense to everybody? Technically, the fact you live 20 years longer means population grows a little bit. Now we've got old people in the population as well. But that's pretty subtle. It doesn't affect birth rates. So once you folded in the elderly age bracket, then there's no more growth in population. Does that make sense to everybody? But why would wealth cause populations to grow so much? Yeah.
Well, like factories brought income to families, and so then when families had like income, they would have babies because they could support it, or they could support the babies.
Yes?
Wasn't it that like you couldn't get married or like have kids if you couldn't afford to buy a house?
Right. So in industrial Europe, people would not usually have kids when they were like, what's it called? Living outside of wedlock, right? So having the possibility of family support, that sort of, I mean, I don't want to make any assumptions, but you'll understand the biology of when you can actually start breeding as opposed to the cultural impacts that may delay that decision, right? Okay. Any questions on number 37 then? Are we good? Finally, on number 41, I understand that a lot of you had trouble with the name. Yes? Indira Gandhi with an H after the G. I don't know how well you were able to focus right at the end of the period there, but that speech that Indira Gandhi gave was one of the most important in social justice, in international social justice issues. Extremely critical moment. Remember the context. Late 60s, early 1970s, everybody's freaking out about population growth. Anybody remember that name? The book by Paul Ehrlich called? That one. Book comes out. Everybody's worried about, oh my God, so many people. This giant United Nations conference. Giant United Nations conference. All these heads of state, coincidentally, almost every single person in the room was a man. And there's like giant amphitheater. We're talking like hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of people. And every speaker is like, how do we address this population problem? Which, you know, tongue-in-cheek, wink, wink, was pretty much, how do we get India to stop making babies? And one of the only female heads of state in the world at the time stands up in the front. She's a very petite woman, very soft-spoken, very careful with her words. She says, of course, we do have a high birth rate, and of course we welcome all of your help in developing our nation. That said, please keep in mind, your developed countries have a huge footprint. She said 17 children born in my country have less environmental impact than one child born in yours. And that was the other half of this social justice environmental discussion about the rich and the poor and the damage and the resources. That was a really important speech. it was the social justice I have a dream speech. I mean, it was like everybody knows this particular moment in time. All right. Anybody want to talk more about any of the study goals anywhere in this unit? My hunch is you all want to talk about the test. But I want to make sure that everybody got the right study goals. You can look through all of them, but I need you to take out your study guide, the printed study guide thing. What?
I lost my study guide.
There might be one in the back of that. I do this thing in APES where I give study goals stars. That means like how careful you have to be in your notes. There's a lot of reasons why you might need to be careful. One of them is, I notice some concepts just confuse people more than other things. Like year in and year out, I don't know why the rule of 70 is such a stumper, but year in and year out, students struggle with the rule of 7. Another reason that something might require extra acuity in your note-taking is, I've seen all the AP tests that have ever been written, and I can just tell you, some stuff shows up more often than other stuff. It's just more likely to be on the test. Sometimes there's things which I'm telling you now that I know for a fact are going to be in unit number 3, and unit number 5, and unit number 7, and unit number 10. Like it comes up over and over and over. So some vocab and some study goals get 1 or 2 or 3 stars. Like, watch this. Heads up, make sure you've got good notes. You probably want to reread this one and make sure that you talk it over with people you know. Or, this is like mandatory information that's totally critical that you must know because it's on every AP test, it comes up all year, and students mess it up. 1, 2, or 3 stars. Got it? Here we go. Tragedy of the Commons, 3 stars. I go in the order of your study guide. That's why you have it out. This is the sort of thing where you like want to put a couple stars on it because that's like read it over, talk about it with your friends, compare notes, do a little independent research on the Google machine. Those 4 different justifications, 1 star. Mostly because I think it comes up throughout the year. It's an interesting conversation. The variables, 1 star. Dependent, independent, manipulated, and responding. And uniformitarianism, 1 star. Students just, they have a lot of trouble explaining this one. Study goal number 2 gets a star. John Eli Miller is just super famous. Number 5, critical concept, 1 star. Silence. Number 6, 1 star for data that's almost always on the AP test. They seem to ask that one all the time. That was number 6. Number 7, the precautionary principle. It's a critical concept. It's like a fundamental of thinking about the environment. Number 12, key concept. All scientists know and people in the public never know. Number 13 gets 1 star. And please remember, number 13 and number 24 should kind of be studied together about how our science is unique and about how our problems are unique.
13
And 24. Listen very carefully to this. Numbers 17 and 18 get 3 stars each. Always on the AP test. Come up in all of my units. Students always fumble those. Number 20 gets 1 star, environmental unity. And number 24 gets 1 star, don't forget, goes with 13. In the reader, no stars this time. Just so you know, my unit readers are usually a lot of content. Like this is the reader for the next one. A lot of content. But in this one, Unit 1 reader, that was mostly just some deep thoughts, how to think about the science. I don't really care. Out of the movie, numbers 34 and 35 that we talked about today get 1 star. And number 37 gets 1 star.
Wait, what's your numbers?
35, 34, 35, 36.
About these stars, and I'll try to remind you every unit, but you got to know something. The stars has nothing to do with my unit exam. Everything in the study guide, whether you got it out of the book or it came up in my class, everything is on the test tomorrow. Or at least it could be on the test tomorrow. My philosophy is a lot of this stuff you should be able to get out of the book, and if not, you should ask me, but I don't need to talk about it. A lot of that's on the test. The basics. There will be stuff on the test that I never talked about, that nobody asked me, that got no stars, that'll be on the exam. Some of the stuff that's come up in class, whether or not it got stars, that'll be on the exam. And of course, some of the things with stars, yeah, because, they're like kind of important. Sure, they'll be on the test too. But the stars is not what to study. It's places where I'm warning you about the depth of your note-taking. If something has stars and you blew off the notes, bad move. Any questions about that? Okay. Tomorrow is test day. All of your homework will need to be stapled in the order that it was due, with warm-ups in the back. The post-lab, 1.1 through 1.4, and the warm-ups. You'll staple them and put them right here. That's tomorrow. Are there any questions about the homework packet? If you've done any extra credit other than the movies, like it says here, you'll include the write-up with a photo and or any graphs, charts, tables, or infographics that add to the course. Remember, here are the limits. All the extra credit will go in this box. Are there any questions about that?
For Unit 0, the graphs and charts, would it be like carrying capacity and sustainability?
Anything that came up on these days. So really, aside from tragedy and Easter Island and maybe the trouble of the fishing example, like the concept of the fishing example, and nothing else. Carrying capacity is in Unit 1. Yeah?
Should we staple together all the extra credit or just?
No, the extra credits are loose. They're not stapled. Because they get split in separate piles that are processed. Anybody else? Yeah. Yeah.
For the tragedy of the commons, when we had to do like the 4 golden lines or
Yeah.
like the recap, should we put that in there as well?
That wasn't stamped, no. Anybody else? Okay, now about the test. My exams are a miniature of the AP test in May. Everything will be as similar as I can possibly make it. So you need a pencil and a pen for the Scantron and the free response, just like in May. There's a 60-40 credit split, just like in May. It's timed, just like in May. But this section is less timed, so you'll get a quarter of an AP test and a quarter of an AP test in a quarter of the time per section. This trains you to the pacing, to the rigor, to the stress, or the spare time, or whatever. Just so you know, Unit 1 is mini because there hasn't been a lot of content. This has been really candy cane. So I only ask 50 multiple choice and a short free response question. That's just for this one. Unit 1 will be especially short. Questions about that? Yeah?
Will we still get the same amount of time for?
No, you'll get the same amount of time per question. So this will be whatever 3/5 of that time is. Who else? Yes? No, correct. It's 3/4 the length. Yeah. Just so you know, the free response question is not an essay. There's no like expository writing. You don't do like hamburger format. Like, you just answer the question in a full sentence. Just so you know, the full sentence is mandatory. Must be full sentence. But usually the answer can be a single sentence per question. Who was the first president of the United States? The first president was George Washington, period. If you wrote George Washington, you'd be accurate, but get 0 points, because that's not the right format. It must be a full sentence. Finally, there will be math. On this free response question and in the math questions, you always show your work, you always include your units, and remember there's no points for the answer alone.